I know it's fun to kind of dog on the Texans based on the trades they've been doing, but I do kind of like Brandon Cooks and David Johnson this year in Houston. You saw what Carlos Hyde, a supposedly washed Carlos Hyde, was supposed to not be able to do what he did last year.
Yes, we're back again. We're back again.
Hey, let's pump up the volume.
Right here.
What fantasy football player do you think will rise again in 2020? And then I said, I'll start, and I put Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that Juju Smith is a guy that is starting to go under the radar. A lot of people aren't really talking about Juju like they certainly were last year. And we will come out with a show, post-hype sleepers, Travis, which is kind of what this is a little bit. But I want to get your thoughts as well as throw out some big names that a lot of people were talking about and see if any of those guys kind of pique your interest. A couple of them, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, you had David Johnson, you had Brandon Cooks, who newly got traded to the Houston Texans. You have, who else here? I said Todd Gurley already. Drew Brees, Will Fuller, Baker Mayfield is another one. James Conner. So what are you thinking? Who is your guy? What guy do you think will, who had a down year in 2019 will bounce back to have a big year and fantasy players will remember their name going into next year?
I know it's fun to kind of dog on the Texans based on the trades they've been doing, but I do kind of like Brandon Cooks and David Johnson this year in Houston. You saw what Carlos Hyde, a supposedly washed Carlos Hyde, was supposed to not be able to do what he did last year with Houston. We know Bill O'Brien's going to run the football. I think David Johnson stands a good chance to get a good amount of yards. And then also Brandon Cooks. If he can stay healthy, that dude can stretch the field, and Deshaun Watson can get it to those kind of receivers. So definitely those guys. Look, Baker Mayfield is one of those guys that you just you want to like a lot because of his attitude and his moxie. I think that Kevin Stefanski coming over could mean big things for Baker this year, and we could actually see him rise to that potential we were trying to peg him with last year. So those are a few of the names that I've been kind of looking at. Obviously not a rise again candidate, but we were talking a little off air about David Montgomery. I think David Montgomery is a candidate who was, we were excited about coming into last year, and then could be a guy that we could be excited about again this year based on his results.
Oh, yeah. I think that's definitely a guy that I'll be looking at in a lot of leagues simply because a lot of people were down on him. He did somewhat produce when given the opportunities, especially like down the stretch. He had some monster games. So I think that with coming into his second year into that system, and being overlooked in the fantasy community, especially at the running back position, you're going to want to take a look at guys like that, a guy like David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, guys that sure they might not be able to get you that top 5 production, but you're going to be getting these guys way later. They're going to be solid foundation pieces to build your roster, and then you can, turn those guys over later and potentially get the new fresh legs and things like that down the season, down the stretch.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.